not just anybody. Help! You know I need someone. Help! When I was young, was so much.
All right, welcome back to the Pain and Wellness Show. Certainly, this is an incredible conversation. Any way we can take this to 2 hours today? Man. So, David, wanted to talk to you about the system and you know, how affordable it is for any individual. And somebody, you know, obviously somebody with your skill and somebody who's had the experience that you have is in demand. And I'm sure you'd like to represent everybody, but the financial the financial factor jumps in there. I often say that there has to be a different solution to that. So I'm going to pose that solution now. We're gonna adjust the criminal justice system right here. I always thought, since the government has, in many cases, a unlimited payroll, especially the federal government. But let's talk about locally. And I know that they don't, but clearly it's more so. You know, they get a bigger bankroll than a bank account than a typical accused. I thought it would be a little bit more. They'd be a little bit more careful if there was a system where if they press charges on somebody, if the individual wins the case, that they got to pay his legal bills. Okay, and I say that because you'd be a lot more careful. There'd be a lot more, and at the end of the day, it would create a more of a fair playing ground. If they want a great attorney like yourself, okay, I'm a prosecutor. All right, fellas, I'm in the room and I'm like, okay, well, we got to win this or we got to pay for it ourselves. So, what can be done to even the playing field, if anything?
You know, it's an interesting concept that you bring up. Not only will the government not pay for your expenses if you're prosecuted and you win the case, they won't even expunge your record. So if, you know, years from now you apply for a job, it's going to show on your criminal history that you were arrested and charged with burglary or rape or whatever it might be. And you could be like, well, wait a second, I was found not guilty. Well, I'm sorry, but you're not getting the job because you were arrested for this.
Right.
So, you know, the government will not, they won't bend at all.
And it's weird. We're in America. I say this, and this is a crazy, you know, and this is about as extreme a statement. You know, you whenever the O.J. Simpson thing comes on, clearly, in my opinion, obviously he was found guilty, and I believe that he was guilty based on the facts. But when people start jumping up and down talking about what a scumbag is and all those things, because he was able to pay for a defense that won, I say, well, listen, if you're not going to have the same passion about your opinion for those who don't have the money for a defense every day, who are in jail because they couldn't afford a defense, don't be jumping up and down about O.J. Simpson, you know, how he beat the system because he had the money, because most people don't have it. And it's a position, you know, that I've had a little, you know, of course, listen, guy should be, in my opinion, should be in jail for life, but he was found not guilty. And so, you know, it's just an observation coming in the United States of America. You would think we would, now look, it's the greatest country in the world, but it poses a different, you're as a great defense attorney and somebody with a lot of experience, you're limited in what you can do. You think there'll ever be because, well, public defenders, they have public defenders, but what kind of defense can somebody get with a public defender?
Well, I think that the problem with the public defender system that we have in place is they're overwhelmed.
Right.
They just have too many cases. And, you know, anybody in that position would be overwhelmed. And so what happens is, you know, they can't pay the attention to a case or to the family who's supporting the loved one. And talk about the case, as well as somebody who's privately retained.
Sure.
Chris and I just actually hired the 10th attorney in our office, and we hired somebody. She has been in the public defender's office for the last 9 years, And I think the reason why, the main motivating factor for her leaving the public defender's office to coming over and working for our firm is that she was frustrated by the lack of resources that she had at the public defender's office. She was frustrated by the fact that just their internal unwritten rules limited the amount of effort that they can put on to any particular case. And she just couldn't handle the emotionally taxing aspect of representing these people, but being so hamstrung in defending them in their cases.
Well, it's your credibility on the line too, as a defender, because if you don't have everything that you need to win the case, it makes you look less of a lawyer.
Right, and I'll tell you, and I'm not coming down on prosecutors either. They're in the system too. So in other words, everybody's in the same pressure cooker. You're a young prosecutor, and you're out there doing, and you want justice, and you want to be able to do those things. Like you said at the beginning of the show, David, everybody wants justice. Okay, in other words, that's clearly the situation. The media obviously jumps on board. I mean, it's a formula that works for them, and so. Okay, I get it, but prosecutors, the DA's office are all in, and that's why with Krasner coming in, it's definitely a unique type situation because he's, he was a defense attorney. He's compassionate, for defendants and obviously the innocent until proved guilty, which is an interesting. Perspective for somebody running for DA, somebody almost who wants criminal justice reform. Let me ask you a quick question. First of all, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, David, contact information if they need your services.
Sure. They can contact me at 215-860-3303 or David at zealouslaw.com. And
the website is zealouslaw.com.
Zealouslaw.com is the website.
Awesome. I mean, let me thank Brandon Swartz, and I don't think we're quite done. I want to thank you so much for bringing David in here because it's been a really, kind of exciting. This is just a really refreshing type of.
I knew based on your commitment to the working person in Philadelphia that David would be right up your alley, but I'm even more happy with your reaction to him being here than I expected to be. So.
I was writing my questions down today, and Marla's, this is a great. Kind of like a platform to be able to just, the questions that you're posing and just things that, the normal person would want to hear out there.
I do have another question, though,
sure,
and this is going to kind of unpeel a layer, and I'm sure our audience is probably wondering too, but the recent case with Kate Steinle with Jose or Garcia, what is your feeling? And you don't have to get into your exact position on that case, but maybe if you can just give us some information on what you feel or position on illegal immigration. Do they have the same rights as a United States citizen when there's a crime factor that's involved? And, maybe you could just touch on that for us.
Well, I think, they do have the same rights. Mm-hmm. Those constitutional rights apply to them. But I think they don't realize that. Mm-hmm. So when in digging in that case, the police questioned him for hours on end. He apparently gave different responses. There was a translator or somebody who could translate for him. But the key is that, I don't know, he probably didn't understand that when the government's asking you questions, you have the right to remain silent.
Right.
And anything you say can and will be used against you. And sure enough, it was all used against him.
Right.
But we have to be in a situation where people understand you do not have to answer any questions that the government poses to you, whether it's the police department, whether it's
Silence
federal.
is golden in some cases.
And in some cases, you're better off talking to an attorney first.
Right. And I was going to ask you, how soon, if you find yourself, or what, and I mean, listen, you watch these shows. And there's some total buffoons out there. I mean, we've been talking about people that are getting life insurance policies on their wife. Next thing you know, she's not there and he's partying that night. Seems like a recipe for absolutely insanity. Okay, but because if you're the spouse, you're the first individual. But my point is, if you find yourself in an interrogation, you think you're going down for a witness, and you're looking at what point, even if you're just not comfortable with, you weren't involved in something, how quickly should you stop it and say, listen, I want an attorney. This is getting a little, because most people are like, listen, I have nothing to hide. You don't realize that them individuals standing at the cross, they got a job, and that job is, if they have a hunch, to obviously talk to you about any facts that you might know. How quickly should you get an attorney?
Before you even go sit down with the police, I would say
people are afraid of being a suspect, though.
I know, but the problem is you don't know what information they already have, and believe me, by the time they get to you, the police already have a pretty good idea of where the investigation is headed. It's just a matter of supporting what their theory is.
So I want to thank David Zealous of Zealous Law for an unbelievable segment. Brandon Swartz, awesome. One of the premier injury firms in the state of Pennsylvania. Brandon, real quickly, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, you're
1-800-JUSTICE.
1-800-JUSTICE. Sorry about that one, David. And David, one more time, your contact information.
215-860-3303.
And if you can't remember that, just
spell?
call me at 1-800-JUSTICE.
All right. Thanks so much, gentlemen. Unbelievable segment. We'll be back.